told in Georgia that I was supposed to be a human shield. And when the Russians were invaded, and I was like, okay, I'm freaking out inside, and I'm peaceful on the exterior. Right?
Let me reintroduce and announce, if you're just joining us, you're watching Empowering Women to Become Social Change Makers. And we have already covered some great details. I would encourage you to find on both our LinkedIn and social media platforms the link for you to watch the replay in the event you didn't catch our broadcast today from the beginning. We know that everybody have busy, important lives, and you can't always have the time to sit down and watch our live broadcast or anyone's live broadcast for that matter. Stephanie was once a diplomat, having lived in many countries, and I've been talking to her about what it was like to live in Georgia. What was it like to live in a country where war was going on all around her? We are talking about how women can become social change makers by way of being a diplomat or through other channels. Before we move into the phase of how she went from a diplomat into a holistic healer and an educator, I have a few more questions I'm asking her about the diplomatic world, and I hope you will find it very interesting and helpful. So, Stephanie, I would like to know, from 1 to 10, is it advisable, 10 being the greatest, is it advisable for a woman in her 50 to 60s to become a diplomat? Your answer.
If that's what drives you and that's your passion and that's what's interesting to you, then it's an amazing opportunity in order um it's an amazing opportunity in order to work at a deeper scale of what you've learned and worked on in the US or what you've worked on in your country that you want to apply in a different scenario. And like, if you are the best of your profession and you want to apply yourself in service and do something intriguing, and you can deal with, if you and you can tolerate or even enjoy a political landscape, because that's the part I didn't know, is that I thought I was just going to help people. I had no, even though I studied politics, I didn't know how political aid was. So
What do you think is the scariest part about being a diplomat? What's scary about it?
well, I know some people who've been evacuated a couple of times, and I was talking earlier this week with someone who was not a diplomat and head of a field office in Burundi at the end of the conflict, and they evacuated and moved a couple of times. And so, I mean, I know some people who liked the evacuations because they got to go back to the US and do their stuff, and they didn't mind the disruption of like a war breaking out and then going to it and just like being evacuated. And but this adrenaline junkie is part of the perpetual fight and flight, which is sort of ingrained in a lot of society. And so, I mean, I wouldn't call it healthy, but it's sometimes exciting for people to have those types of scenarios. For me, the scariest part might have been the breakout of conflict, or just not knowing what was going to happen, or not knowing if something bad was going to happen. But the truth is you can predict a lot of that stuff. I didn't live in any countries after Georgia that had a possible major risk of a war breaking out, and I knew on day 3 of being in Georgia that there was a possibility of something happening with Russia. It wasn't like it was a little like a little thing coming out of nowhere. I mean, it was my entire existence in Georgia was framed around what the Russians are doing now, or what's happening with Russia now. So you can predict a lot of conflict. I mean, you have to be very comfortable with uncertainty, and you have to
Mm,
be very comfortable with not being in control of anything and not having an opinion and not having a just I mean, you can have an opinion about like things as long as it's not a personal opinion. So like if you believe that for I mean, even on something controversial about like something like hymen reconstruction surgery or like
mm,
something about virginity before marriage. I mean, even those topics, I mean, you're not supposed to have an opinion as a diplomat. You are working with the host country to support what the host country wants. And you also are promoting US foreign interests. And if the agenda of the US is to promote women overseas or freedom for women and women's choice or whatever it is that is being promoted at the time, that's what you're promoting. So I mean, people who worked in health at one point were allowing abortions, and at other points they were not doing any abortions because of the different regimes and
mm.
like in office. And for the health department of humanitarian assistance has always been very fluctuating depending on who's in office over what you can and you can't do in these countries. And some people were pretty frustrated because it was like, how do you talk about just abstinence as a process in a country with HIV AIDS? And like it was complicated for some people. So these are big questions. And I mean, the scariest thing is not knowing yourself. I would say not knowing yourself and not knowing your reactions and not knowing who you are. It would be the hardest thing to be a diplomat. You have to
Well,
know
what
who.
you said moments ago, I think is very interesting, and I know to be true, having lived all over the world. You're not allowed an opinion, even when I was in my own independence and helping humanity as a speaker. Um, being a virgin when you marry, that's essential in a lot of these countries, unlike the United States and maybe Western countries, let's say. So, but I want you to tap a little bit more on being at that event, political event. Voting was happening in the United States, and you had to wear both pins. Now, I understand that because of who I am and what I've done and where I am now in my business, excuse me, in my business life. But I want you to expound on that because somebody is watching, probably have a real big opinion about that
Mhm.
and doesn't understand what you meant by that, wherein I do. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of funny. I'm actually a better diplomat now than I was then because I understand at a deeper level. So back to your question on the 50 or 60-year-old. I think the older you are, the more mature you are, and the
Mm.
easier it is for you to 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 put up with some of these
Or
challenging
embrace it. Yeah.
limitations
Mm-hmm.
or embrace these
Mm-hmm.
these challenging limitations. I was a human rights activist before and a journalist before I became a diplomat. And so it was a very interesting career trajectory. So having an opinion about a political party is considered an opinion. And as a US diplomat, you are not supposed to have an opinion you're not supposed to be a person. You're supposed to be a representative of your country at all
The
times,
time. Mm-hmm.
at the nail salon, at the gym, and that
Grocery
is
store.
the
Mm-hmm.
grocery store. And
Mm-hmm.
that is one of the hardest parts about being a diplomat is not knowing who's watching and who are the people around you. And it's a command performance all the time, and it's not a bad thing. I'm not going to have a judge. I'm not going to pass a judgment on if it's good or bad. It's just sort of what
Mm-hmm.
it is. And it's hard on your nervous system if you're not
Yes.
expecting that.
But I understand it, and I'll just share my opinion on it. If you wore one pin, that indicated that was the party you were in favor of.
Yeah.
By wearing both pins, you're clearly making a statement that you don't have one political party in favor versus the other. You're here to support balance. And I don't think a lot of viewers would necessarily agree with that. or understand that. So that's why I ask you to sort of elaborate on that.
Yeah, and it's a division. If you're picking one
Yeah,
party, then you're isolating the other people of the
yeah,
other party, and to be quite frank, I mean, there's too much division as it is in the world, and so it's like the more that you can there's a thousand ways this is what I always say, so there's a thousand ways we can disagree with each other, but
yeah.
we can't if we it's not that we can't be our own unique selves, it's more like if we only want to push our unique identities onto everyone else, it's hard to find
Mm,
common ground. So why don't
mm.
we try to find what we have in common rather than the reasons why we should kill each other?
Did you ever experience in 16 years gender inequality, Stephanie, the way you do in the United States, in other countries?
Gender inequality?
Yes.
Um, I was gonna say I actually found South Africa to be more balanced than the US is with regards to all of these topics like gender equality, racial equality. I found there to be more animosity and more aggression in the US than in a lot of these countries overseas. With gender inequality, I was driving once in Jordan with my then boyfriend.
In
And
Jordan, Amman, Jordan?
yeah, in Jordan,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
he didn't we were going to Wadi Rum and to the Petra, and he didn't have a driver's license, and since I'd been driving since I was 6, essentially, I was like, "I can deal with Middle Eastern traffic, that'll be fine." Um, so so we rented the car, and I was driving around, and all these Arab men were just, like, staring at me. I was like, "Why is that man letting the woman drive?"
Yeah, I know Jordan well. Spent a lot of time there. Hmm.
And so, I mean, I've just always been an anomaly and I've attracted anomalous situations. Like he didn't have a driver's license and I learned how to drive when I was very young and I was like sailing single hand boats like pretty much full time outside of my school time when I was in high school. And so I was pretty much driving a boat, like a sailboat, but a boat. So I was very good at direction and like a movement of an object and in relation to other objects, like with boats and cars and stuff. And so that's one time where I watched gender inequality. The other thing that sticks out again with driving was when I lived in Bosnia, they had landmines in a lot of
Yeah,
places. And
really
my
bad.
friend,
Hmm.
yeah, horrible. It's also in Somaliland and a lot of places. And landmines, I will say, I do have an opinion on landmines. Landmines are one of the most destructive and horrible,
Hmm.
nasty things ever created. Really, really
Hmm.
horrible things. And my friends were telling me how they were part of the demining parts of the organization, and they were 99% sure where the landmines had been removed. But I was like, my limbs are worth more than 1% um, possibility of mistake, and so I didn't really go many places walking around in Bosnia because I wanted to stay safe. And so I would drive across the country into Croatia. Um, to 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 be myself and to be by the coast by the ocean most weekends. And part of the ways I was driving through an area where there were rape camps in Bosnia and really horrible atrocities had happened. And my colleagues were asking me, "Do you feel safe driving in that area?" And I was like, it's funny, because I didn't have a me it's that's how you can understand what trauma is
Mm.
because I didn't have an experience of that fear, and so I don't have a fear of that land because I didn't have that experience of that
Mm.
land, and even though I'm sensitive to land and I'm sensitive to what happened in land, and I read what happens in land, um, I literally would just play my drum while I'm driving through that area. I would play my
Mm.
drum and a rattle to stay awake, to be driving late at night when there's less traffic, and, it'd be faster, and I was often just coming back from the coast after sunset, and so I didn't have a fear. I drove across the borders of countries at, like, 10 o'clock at night, at midnight, and just getting back to a place, and it's just sort of funny. I was raised to be fearless. I was
Mm,
sailing boats
me too.
from a young age, and my dad promoted Amelia Earhart, and that was part of my trajectory too. Is that I was taught that women can do anything by a slightly macho man, and like
Mm,
a lovely macho man. But the point is like he's not like a super like woman. He's just a human is the point.
mhm,
And so like
mhm.
men don't have to be feminist or non-feminist. They just have to love. And I think if you
And
love,
be sensitive. Mhm.
yeah, if you love and if you're sensitive, you you don't limit what someone's capable of or not capable of. And I also went to an all-girls school to answer your question, what can you do now to become a diplomat? Is like there's certain prerequisites to do all of these things that you're never really aware of, but it's part of who you are and part of what you do. And I've always been questioning things from a very young age, and I didn't have fear of asking questions. I didn't have fear of standing up for myself, and I was actually I was just always very, very, very fearless and very confident about doing all of these things. And so there's different layers of what you need and how you get the never into now and the now into never. It's different layers of who you are. And
Mm,
with the gender inequality question, um, even as a diplomat and even in countries where there's different perspectives of what women do and what men do, the way that you hold yourself is it's not like asserting yourself onto the other country and onto the other viewpoints. It's just instead having a form of curiosity about why things exist one way and another way, and seeing how to work with the system and the way that it exists, and seeing if everyone thinks that way or if there's outliers who think a different way. Was it always
yes,
that way?
yes.
And how do they feel about it being that way? And that's how you have conversations on, like, I was in a minivan once talking about virginity before marriage, and my students, I had a class of a master's level class of girls in Georgia and one Turkish guy. And when they got bored, I would ask them about kidnapped brides and I'd ask them about virginity before marriage to like have interesting conversations. And on one trip, my students took me with their friends on a trip somewhere, and they said, you can ask the question. And we were in a minivan with like a bunch of guys and a few girls, and I'm like, are you sure we're driving in the mountains, we're gonna be here for a while, are you sure I should ask this question? And I asked questions about like why men wanted virgins when they were married, and it's like, no one's gonna die in this car, like, are you sure we can have this conversation? They're like, yeah, no, they're cool. And I was like, okay, awesome. And so we had the conversation, and I was like, do you have a girlfriend? Yes. Like, all right. What is your relationship like? And they're like, oh, we do everything. And I'm like, okay. And do you want to marry a virgin? Yeah. I'm like, okay. Do you want to marry your girlfriend? No. Okay.
Why not? We're
um,
getting the cow and the milk, so that's why they don't want to marry her.
Well,
Wow.
it's sort of complicated because I mean, when you're looking at a country where you have to get married in order to have intimate relationships, you're
Yeah,
gonna end up in a situation where you might not marry the
compatible.
person you want to marry.
Exactly. Or
And
if it's arranged by the parents, that still goes on.
yeah,
Honor
exactly.
killings still go on for falling in love with someone outside of who the parents have arranged. I have friends who are like my godsons, my goddaughters, who have relatives deceased now because of it.
Hmm.
But it's the
Yeah.
way of the world. Before we move in and trans into what you're doing now as a holistic healer and educator, give a few tips that would encourage someone to become a diplomat. What would you say in 5 steps or 5 tips?
5 steps or 5 tips. The first tip would be, the most important tip for me is having a practice of resilience and having a practice of non-reactivity and
Okay.
knowing who you are. Because if you don't have any of those things, you're going to go crazy over the 1,000 different ways that the cultures around you are doing things that defy everything that you've been programmed to think is right or wrong inside of you.
Mhm.
And you're going to
Mhm.
go crazy. So
Mhm.
having a really calm demeanor is really important, and having a variety of resilience and wellness practices, from like long practices like exercise or yoga or anything that's like movement based, to something small like meditation.
Mm.
And my practice that I always did, and I'm doing it right now, is a practice called Jinsen Jitsu.
Yeah.
And it's a Japanese healing modality where there's different points on your body where you can bring balance. And when in doubt, hold a finger.
Mm.
Hold any of your fingers. And so I just now do that as a practice. I did it in my meditation practices for my when I taught yoga in the embassies overseas. And I now just pick a finger when I'm talking naturally, and I know that it's going to do something that's going to balance whatever I need because I've picked the right finger. So resilience is your number one tip. Your number two tip would be challenge yourself and learn and talk to the people you don't agree with.
Mhm.
Talk to the people that you quote unquote do not have anything in common with, and learn why they think differently. Because as a diplomat, you are going to have conversations with people that if you were in the US, you would not want to talk to them, most likely. Like in the
Mhm.
embassy, there's going to be people that would be so-called enemies to whatever it is that you believe in, probably. And you have to have common ground and work together and get over yourself, get over your viewpoints, because your viewpoints are probably going to change. And
Mm.
your viewpoints are a reflection of your level of awareness and consciousness at this moment, which hopefully will get deeper and stronger. So talk to people you don't agree with and find common ground, because that's the number one skill you need as a diplomat, is being able to talk to anyone about anything, even if they don't like your country. Um, find a way to make peace.
Mm.
Top three tip: how to be a diplomat. Um, it sort of piggybacks on the doing something different.
Yes.
So it would be learning something new, like learning a new language,
Mhm.
learning
Which is not common for Americans, by the way. You know, they're not good at other languages or expressing a desire to learn them. In Europe, we didn't have a foreign language in school as an elective as they do in the US. It's a part of the curriculum. So I would agree with that. All of it, actually.
yeah, when you learn a new language and you learn a lot about your trauma when you're
Mm-hmm.
learning a language, because you're like, it shouldn't be done that way. What do you mean there's gender of nouns, and like there's like in German there's three genders. There's neuter, feminine, and masculine. In French there's masculine and feminine. Some languages don't even have articles. And
Mm-hmm.
so I mean, you can see your own programming and your own trauma when you learn a language, and like your reactivity to grammar.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You want to
Yeah.
fight the grammar system. You're like, it's not something you can fight, love. It's you just have to sort of accept it. And so learning languages will make you open to a lot of different things, or learning a new skill. And the reason I love that one is because you, the growth mindset is the number one thing you need in order to do most things in life, to start your own business, to be a
Yes.
diplomat, to be a speaker. You have to be willing to step outside of your comfort zone. So
Mm-hmm.
um I think that's three or four.
Yeah.
um
Give us one more.
One more tip to be a diplomat. See what you want to specialize in, and I guess
Like peacekeeping or
so there's two things you need to specialize in. One thing you need to specialize in is, so everyone thinks diplomats just are just general representing the country, and that's just part of what you do, but there's something specific that you do. So it might be like you help socioeconomic opportunities, and you
Mhm.
provide you manage and choose micro loans or micro grants.
Mhm.
in parts of Africa or refugee areas or another location, or perhaps you work on health projects, perhaps you work on education projects, perhaps you're a peace builder. So there's one of those areas that you need to have a boosted resume in. So like volunteer with an organization, with like the International Rescue Committee or CARE or Mercy Corps. Like even if you are just in the US, like they have offices in these areas, and once you sort of get into like know the people there, they can promote you for internships or jobs overseas based on knowing you. It's like that's very helpful. And so volunteering is very helpful. And you also, if you're going to do the self-directed Peace Corps route, you need a skill. So either being great at social media, being great at writing,
or
being
technology. Yeah.
technology, being great at business development, or being great at like engineering, like something technical, something specific that it's going to be a gift for the community, because there's a two-pronged approach to getting into international careers. And the first step is the gift that people actually want. And for me, it was writing, and it was like writing communication. It was writing things in English that people wanted to read for organizations. And then my track was democracy and peace building. And so you have the specific thing that you want to focus on, but you have to have the actual gift, the tangible thing that is going to be a benefit to
that,
the
yeah.
local people.
Okay.
Those two things. And so figure out which two things you can do with love and grace and that you're good at, get experience in it, and then just volunteer, intern, and do informational interviews. Reach out on LinkedIn to people who have backgrounds that you like, and like their posts a lot, engage with their posts, put meaningful questions on there. Don't just ask for an interview, but like support what they're doing, and then
Exactly.
just show that you are in truly interested. And then when they start to show interest in you, you could start to ask questions. How can I get to where you are? But just don't start with asking the questions, tell me how to get to where you are, because they're already probably maxed out and doing too much, but they want to see that you're serious.
Yes. Let's move now into what you do now, holistic healer and educator. What is that all about, and what made you make that major switch like that?
I started to see that I could not create the type of impact that I wanted to create working within the government structure. Change is hard, and it's debatable whether or not change is actually something that's really, really wanted by some of the donors. Like there's been a lot of talk about aid as a form of colonization, neo-colonization, because if you look at the international system and you look at who is giving what to who, if you just had a trade system where you actually were paid fairly for what the country's giving, you wouldn't have the need for so much aid. And so the more my eyes were open to what's actually happening in the world, I wanted to educate, and I wanted to build a network of social change agents. And I was always inspired by organizations like Ashoka with their change makers and fellows that were doing innovative projects around the world. And my favorite part about diplomacy and humanitarian assistance was working with local nonprofits who had to put up with quite a bit and answer a lot of questions and a high threshold of acceptance to donors in order to do what they wanted to do. And to be honest, working with donors is not very helpful for the local organizations, because they just want to do the work. And then they have to do all this reporting to the donors, which takes their time, and they don't do particularly well. And the right things aren't always funded because you have to write these reports. And doing the work is the most important thing.
Mm.
And it's hard to do that. So I wanted to create a network of social change agents. I wanted to see the change that I wanted in the world. And the way to do that is by working one-on-one with people, or working at least in the way that I know gets people where they need to go.
What is a holistic healer?
So I believe each of us has the capacity to be acupuncture needles in our communities. We each have the ability to bring balance and harmony where we are. And the way that we do that is we find balance within ourselves. We find our own like balance between work, life, children, and like complications. And when we hold ourselves in that place of integrity and beauty, we can be the change that we want to be in the world. And so I learned a lot about holistic healing when I started working with the tribe that I was working with in Colombia, and my mentors. And I realized that I needed to change in order to be who I needed to be in this world.
Mm.
And so I've been studying about holistic health. I've been studying about energy management. I've been learning about healing practices, like how to help heal yourself through ancient practices of qigong and Ayurveda and martial arts. And the truth is that you need to be self-sufficient in the world. And so that's, for me, that's what holistic healing is. It's like, how do you be a whole person? How do you be a whole self-integrated person that is able to understand why you're on this planet, why you are in this body, and what you're here to do, and how do you make peace with everything in the world.
Tell our viewers the name of your website and what you do there.
My website is catalyzinginspiration.com, and I am a transformational life coach. I work with clients to help identify what are their blockages. So we start with a goal of what they're trying to get towards. Maybe they're trying to start their own business. Maybe they're trying to learn language. Maybe they're trying to get their dream job. Whatever it is that they're trying to do, get into their dream high school, their dream college. And I listen to them, and I help them to see what's limiting in how they hold themselves, and what's limiting in how they're engaging. And I come up with them the plan to shift those items. I've helped get youth off of alcohol, off of tobacco, off of vaping. I've helped them to be financially responsible. I've helped them to understand, to be. It's basically I'm a bridge between young adults and teens and their adult parents, and I help young adults and adults become adults to be whole humans.
Naturally, what I've heard today, you've gone from a diplomat to a holistic healer and educator. And rather than see it as being like this, two opposite worlds, it's really like this. Because it sounds like you are applying a global experience, I know I do, into an individual's experience to expand or enhance. Would you say that's accurate?
Yes, because that's actually one of the things that I'm incubating, is like trying to create a mental health project where people who have amazing stories overseas, to inspire the youth in the US and Europe. Because there's like my the elders that I work with always say that the people in the West are poor because they've lost connection with their spirits, they've lost connection with their hearts. And that's why you have huge mental health crises in the Western world, because we're not connected with source. We've elders aren't carrying wisdom anymore, and there's a disconnect in the family, and there's all these challenges. And I truly believe that the more that we're able to understand that your specific challenge is one thing, but how do you put it into perspective? And sometimes to see the perspective, you have to have this deeper level wisdom of uh the people who wrote this email might die by a sniper tomorrow, or
Yeah.
like the people who wrote the book were killed in a war or
Mm,
something like
mm,
that. And when you have a deeper level perspective, you're able to be a more whole human. And
mhm,
I find the more I'm a bridge of cultures, I'm a bridge of everything. I
mhm.
Everyone's story that I've ever heard from all the places I've lived lives inside of me, and I help communicate and share their stories, which is why, again, I want to honor the people of Africa and the different tribes of Africa who want to be the dancers, who want to accomplish their dreams, because everything is possible if you just um, believe in yourself enough to
Exactly.
know that you are capable of doing everything. And if you give it everything that you've got, it's not going to be instant. There's no magic fairy wand that's going to make it happen immediately. But if you dedicate and build your time towards that, you will get exactly where you need to go.
In our closing remarks, I want you to just share something empowering to motivate, and then tell the viewers how to reach you.
Huh. My message to all of you is that you are exactly where you need to be. You're
Mm,
exactly where you need to be. Your pace is sacred, and it's important to honor the where you're at. And even if you think you're not where you're at, the patience with yourself is
mm,
the most important thing that you need in order to get to the next level objective. About 3 weeks ago, I lost my voice for about 2 weeks over my birthday. And it was exactly what I needed. And I wasn't protesting. I mean, I was at first. And then I realized it was a purification process. And so that's
mm.
my empowering message to all of you is instead of trying to shoot everything around you as like, um,
A demon. Mhm,
everyone's hurting me, everyone's doing this is
mhm.
bad, I'm so innocent. Try to see what the universe is reflecting around you. Try to see why these things are happening around you. And if you can start to tap into that, you can get to the next thing.
I
So
needed to hear that. So if nobody received that, I do. I needed to hear that. Go ahead.
and so that would be my empowering message is just see what's showing up, because if you have everyone up in arms around you, there's something to master, there's something to learn. And soften your belly, relax your body, and just
Mhm.
see what's trying to show up with love and grace. It's not an invader trying to attack you, it's something that's trying to teach you. And that's my number one lesson for everyone. And
Last tip, tell the viewers how to DM you or reach you to be a
yes,
part of Catalyzing Inspiration.
I want to hear from you, and I would love to work with you and figure out how to get you exactly where you need to go. Your dream is my love. Your dream is my service to you. My website is catalyzinginspiration.com. Um, and if you'd like to reach my free course, it's www.joinstephanie.com. And all you have to do is put your email in there and sign up for my free course. And if you'd like to reach out to me, you can find my contact information on my website, and you can follow me on LinkedIn. It's Stephanie Hilborn, just like written on the screen here. On YouTube, it's Catalyzing Inspiration. On Facebook and Instagram, it's Catalyzing Inspiration. And you can email me at stephanie@catalyzinginspiration.com as well.
And we're going to have all of those links that she just gave you on our social media platform, along with this replay for you to watch it at your own leisure, at your own time, so you won't have missed anything. So everything she just gave you by way of contacting her will be posted today, this afternoon, for your pleasure. I want to thank you, Stephanie Hilborn, for being our special featured guest. I know that all the ambassadors with Women Tech Makers, Google Initiative, certainly us at XCEL Crypto Partners, and myself, I'm Roné de Beauvoir, and my viewing audience, my tribe, my team, your tribe, your team, we're all very grateful for your in-depth insight on being a diplomat, the course of your life, what it has meant, and more importantly and beautifully, what you're doing with your life now to advance, touch, heal, and inspire others. So we thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, that's our broadcast for today. Every month, 3 times a month, I am featuring a speaker to empower you, to educate you, to offer you courses, opportunities to increase your financial inclusion, your education, to empower you in every area that you need. That is my blessing and my gift to you, humanity and mankind. Thank you guys for joining us. All the best. Merci beaucoup. Bonne journée. Au revoir.